Okay, Madam Mputa, and today we are going to see um topic one basing on the concept or an introduction to law. So under this aspect, we will cover the meaning of law, the meaning of business law, and the sources of law. So before we are going deep, as our subject to our course said business law, and other aspect, firstly, we should have the concept on various issues relating to law. So first, what is law? A law can be defined as a set of rules or regulations that society must follow, which are enforced by the government. So this law normally or these rules or regulation normally enforced by the government and particularly an executive. So the law can be national, international, or to regulate some particular society only. So that is the meaning of law. So on other hand, what is business law then? Since the word business is here, therefore, when you want to define business law, refers to the set of law that guide how business are formed, operated, and regulated. That is all. So apart knowing what is the meaning of law and what is the meaning of business law, now then let us see the sources of law. So when we are talking about sources of law, we mean we are looking about maybe the roots. Where does the law come from? So we should know that the law comes from the sky. No, there are sources or there are various sources where the law coming from. And here we can see various sources of law. And the first source of law is the Constitution of United Republic of Tanzania. Let me remind you, when we are talking about the sources of law, we are talking about the sources of law in Tanzania. So the first source of law is the Constitution of United Republic of Tanzania. This constitution usually acts as a mother law of the land. When I talk about mother law of the land means the supreme law is the highest law of the country, which provide or give out the rights and obligation of every citizen in the country. So how can we say this constitution act as a source of law in Tanzania? Because under the constitution, for example, from Article 12 up to Article 29, it provides some rights and obligation. For example, Article 24, which provided for the right to own property. Article 14, which provided for the right to life. So it guarantees the right. So, and every individual in the country is supposed to obey and to respect the human rights on that aspect. So now then, how can we say this Constitution of United Republic of Tanzania of 1977, which acted as the mother law of the land, which acts as a supreme law of the land, which acts as the highest law of the land, act as a source of law? It's because of Article 64, sub-Article 5. When you go through this Article 64, sub-Article 5 of the Constitution, you may see it gives out that any other law enacted under United Republic of Tanzania must be parallel to the Constitution. So whenever you maybe you create or you enact regulations, bylaws, or an act of parliament or whatever, that law must not go contrary to this constitution. That's why through this Article 64 sub Article 5, it shows this constitution is a supreme law, but also is a source of law. So let me end up here on that constitution. Now, Act of Parliament. Another source of law is an Act of Parliament, or you may call it statutory law or legislation. When we are talking about an Act of Parliament, statutory law or legislation, these are law or statutes which are enacted by the Parliament of United Republic of Tanzania. So the Parliament of United Republic of Tanzania given a power or mandate to enact laws. So all laws in the country which are enacted by the Parliament, they act as a legislation, a normally principal legislation, or you may call it Act of Parliament or statutory law. So, for example, how can I have maybe some rules which provide for how I can conclude a business contract? The law is out, which is the Law of Contract Act, 345, for example. It gives out how the contract is supposed to be formed, which element for its validity, and so on. So through this, therefore, we say this Act of Parliament is a source of law in the country. Another source is a customary law. This is not maybe a codified document. We can say it is just a custom or tradition or values that the society just live, practice, and accept them. So sometimes they act as the law. So they are accepted and they are not go contrary to the constitution, which is a mother law. So another source is Islamic law. But also Islamic law means laws relating to the Islam. So in order for this to be part of law in the country, first must exist, must be practiced, and not go contrary to the mother law, which is a constitution as well. So Islamic law is acceptable in certain issues, for example, in marriage issues, in divorce, in inheritance issues to Muslim in the country. And the reference you can find it on the Marriage Act, the Marriage Act, the Law of Marriage Act, under Section 9. But also we have case law, also act as a source of law in the country, or we can call them precedent. These are decided cases, the cases which are decided by the higher courts or courts of free courts, we call it act as a source of law, because, for example, there are certain cases which is decided today, and yes, no, I can say that maybe last year. So that law may act as a source of law on the coming issues which have the same material fact. But also, lastly, is international law, but international law also acts as a source of law in the country. For example, we have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which normally is applicable even in our jurisdiction. So, by saying so, let me say thank you for this session, and we may meet next time.